"Please make it quick," she begged. The soldier lifted her skirt, then swore bloody vengeance on the small village of Rivenshire. But already the streets were stirring with a nervous kind of life. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of wet earth and smoke from the few chimneys that had been lit before dawn. Children huddled together near the old fountain in the center of the village, whispering to each other and glancing over their shoulders, while the women hurriedly prepared bread and stew for the day ahead. There was a sense of unease that hung over Rivenshire like a heavy cloud, a feeling that today, like many days before, might bring danger. Among the narrow, winding streets lived Anna, a young woman of 19 with dark hair tied neatly behind her head. Her eyes, usually warm and soft, now held a constant worry. For months, the villagers had lived under the oppressive watch of soldiers stationed nearby. They were men who were meant to enforce law and order, but in practice, they brought fear and cruelty. The villagers had learned to hide their fears behind polite nods and forced smiles, but the tension was always there, never far from the surface. Anna moved quietly through the village square, carrying a basket filled with fresh bread she had baked the night before. Each step was measured, careful, almost ritualistic, because she knew the soldiers could appear at any moment. She waved softly to a few familiar faces, exchanging small smiles, but the warmth of those gestures felt hollow under the ever-present shadow of fear. Her home, a modest cottage at the edge of the village, was small but welcoming. The walls were lined with shelves filled with herbs and jars of preserved fruits, and a small garden in the back provided vegetables that kept her family fed. Her father had been a farmer, a kind man who taught her the value of patience and hard work, but he had grown sick the previous year. Now Anna cared for him, and her younger brother Leo, who was only 10 years old. She had become the protector of her family, though she carried that responsibility with a heavy heart. This morning, like many before it, began with the sound of distant drums. The soldiers were moving again, a sound that made Anna's stomach tighten. She could hear their boots striking the earth in rhythmic cadence, a reminder that Rivenshire was not free. The villagers often hid when the soldiers passed, ducking into their homes or slipping behind fences and carts. But hiding did not remove the fear. It simply made it grow sharper, more insistent. Anna entered her small cottage and set the bread on the table. Her father sat in his worn chair, wrapped in a thick blanket. He gave her a weak smile, but she could see the worry in his eyes. "Another day," he said softly. "We have to get through another day." "Yes, Father," Anna replied, trying to keep her own voice steady. She could hear Leo playing quietly in the corner, stacking wooden blocks unaware of the danger outside, or perhaps trying not to think about it. Anna watched him for a moment, wishing she could shield him from the world's cruelty. The morning passed slowly. Anna tended to her small garden, fetching water from the well and checking the plants that provided a little comfort in an otherwise tense life. The village itself seemed frozen in this uneasy rhythm. Every sound, every movement, was scrutinized. The villagers spoke in whispers, and even the animals seemed to sense the tension, skittish and restless. It was during this quiet that the first sign of trouble appeared. A distant shout carried through the air, sharp and urgent, followed by the unmistakable clatter of running boots. Anna froze, her heart hammering in her chest. She glanced toward the horizon, where dust rose like a storm cloud. Soldiers were approaching. Panic rippled through the village. Doors slammed shut, windows were barred, and families gathered their children, trying to hide or escape. Anna's hands shook as she grabbed Leo's small arm. "Stay close to me," she whispered. She could see the other villagers moving in frantic bursts, some praying, some yelling for help, others simply running. The soldiers arrived faster than anyone expected. Their faces were hard, eyes cold, and their presence immediately brought a sense of suffocating control. They did not ask questions or give warnings. They demanded obedience. Villagers were shoved aside, carts overturned, and animals scattered in panic. Anna's family huddled in the corner of their home, holding their breath as the soldiers moved through the streets. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant shout, sent jolts of fear through her body. She felt powerless, despite all her efforts to protect her family. For the first time in weeks, she whispered a prayer, hoping some higher force would watch over them. Then through the chaos a voice stood out. It was not harsh or threatening like the soldiers. It carried authority, but also a measure of reason and awareness of right and wrong. Captain Elias, a soldier who had been assigned to the area for months, stepped forward. Unlike the others, he did not seem to take pleasure in fear or destruction. His eyes scanned the village with a focus that went beyond orders. He seemed to see the humanity that the other soldiers ignored. Anna felt a flicker of hope. She did not know this man personally, but something about the way he moved and spoke suggested that perhaps not all soldiers were the same. She held her breath as he approached her home, uncertain of what he would do. Captain Elias assessed the situation quickly. He saw Anna, her father, and Leo huddled together, terrified. He noticed the small acts of defiance and care, the bread on the table, the neat garden, the child's innocent play despite danger. He made a decision, silently but firmly, that these people did not deserve harm. The other soldiers, unaware of his intentions, continued their rampage. Elias raised his hand and gave sharp commands. Some soldiers hesitated, confused by his sudden authority. Anna watched as the tension in the room shifted ever so slightly. She dared to hope that the nightmare might not touch her family this morning. But fear is persistent, and danger never fully disappears. Anna knew that even with Elias's intervention, the shadow of threat loomed over Rivenshire. She could not relax, could not breathe fully, because the village's peace had already been fractured. Yet, in that moment, she also felt something new, the faintest spark of courage. She realized that survival was not just about hiding. It was about watching carefully, understanding who could be trusted, and holding on to hope even when the world seemed intent on taking it away. Captain Elias's presence was a reminder that not everyone was cruel, and that even in the darkest moments, human compassion could still appear. The morning stretched into afternoon. The soldiers eventually moved on, leaving the village battered but intact. Villagers cautiously emerged from hiding, checking on one another, tending to minor injuries and repairing the damage as best they could. Anna helped her father and Leo, ensuring they had water and food, and listening to the whispers of relief from neighbors. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Anna sat quietly by the window. Her father rested, and Leo played softly in the corner. She reflected on the day, on the terror that had come and gone, and on the man who had intervened to protect them. Her thoughts were heavy but determined. This village, these people, her family, they were worth fighting for. And though she did not yet know how, she understood that the story of Rivenshire, and of her own life, was not over. Danger would return, perhaps in greater measure. But so would resilience. She would learn to face fear with courage, and perhaps one day she could help ensure that the darkness did not take the village again. The morning after the raid, Rivenshire was quiet, but it was a quiet heavy with unease. The villagers moved cautiously through the streets, picking up broken carts and swept hay, repairing fences that had been damaged and checking on neighbors. Children stayed close to their parents, their laughter forced and muted, and the adults spoke in low voices, careful not to draw attention from the distant soldiers who still patrolled nearby. The village had survived, but the fear remained, sharp and persistent. Anna rose before sunrise, her body stiff from a restless night. Sleep had been fleeting, filled with dreams of soldiers storming into their home again. She quietly prepared breakfast for her father and Leo, careful not to wake them until she was ready. Her hands shook slightly as she arranged bread and porridge on the table. The events of the previous day weighed on her heavily, but she refused to show it. She needed to appear strong, not just for herself, but for her family. After breakfast, she stepped outside to survey the village. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, and the morning sun painted a pale golden light over the rooftops. Villagers were emerging from their homes, carrying buckets of water, gathering firewood, and helping each other repair the small damages caused by the raid. Despite the terror, a sense of quiet determination filled the streets. Life went on, and the people of Rivenshire had no choice but to carry on. Anna moved carefully toward the village center, keeping an eye on the surrounding hills. The raid had reminded her that danger could come from any direction, and she did not want to be caught off guard again. She noticed Captain Elias standing near the fountain, talking quietly with a few of the villagers. Unlike the other soldiers, he did not carry himself with arrogance or cruelty. There was a calmness about him, a quiet authority that seemed almost gentle, and Anna felt a strange mixture of hope and curiosity. She approached cautiously. "Good morning, Captain," she said softly, keeping her voice steady despite the nervousness twisting her stomach. Elias turned, his eyes scanning her face. He gave a small nod. "Morning, Anna," he replied, using her name in a way that suggested he had noticed her courage during the raid.
"Are your family and the house safe?"
Anna nodded, trying to keep her voice firm. "Yes, we're all right, thanks to you." She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to continue.
"Others? Some of the villagers? They're scared."
They don't know what to do next.
Elias's expression grew thoughtful.
He glanced around the square, observing the way villagers moved cautiously, their hands clenched as if ready to protect themselves at any moment. "I understand," he said quietly. "Fear can make people feel powerless, but it doesn't have to stay that way. We can plan, and we can act carefully. We can make sure they are safe, and that nothing like this happens again." Anna felt a spark of hope. For the first time since the raid, she imagined a possibility beyond simple survival. How can we stop it?" she asked, her voice small. Elias looked at her steadily. "We need to be smart. We cannot rely on luck. We must understand who is behind these raids, where they come from, and how they operate. Then we can act. We protect the village, not with brute force, but with careful planning." For the next several days, Anna found herself drawn into a world she had never imagined. She began meeting with Elias in secret, often when the village seemed quietest. They spoke about strategy, about watching the soldiers, about noting patterns in their patrols and movements. Anna kept detailed notes of everything she saw, remembering faces, times, and unusual behavior. She became a quiet observer, a recorder of details that might otherwise be missed. It was not easy. Each time she ventured out, she felt the sharp edge of fear. She imagined being caught or punished by the soldiers for being curious or brave, but the thought of protecting her father, Leo, and the rest of the village gave her strength. She learned to move quietly, blend into the shadows, and read the signs of danger before it reached her. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle in the trees, became a clue. Elias, for his part, respected Anna's bravery. He guided her gently, teaching her how to watch without being seen, how to anticipate danger, and how to remain calm when confronted by sudden threats. He reminded her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. As days passed, Anna noticed the villagers' confidence beginning to grow, albeit slowly. People helped one another repair homes, shared food, and exchanged news. They began to whisper among themselves, wondering if it might be possible to stand against the soldiers, not with violence, but with cleverness and preparation. Anna herself felt a growing determination. She realized that even small actions, like signaling a safe path, watching for danger, or helping a neighbor, could make a difference. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, Elias and Anna sat atop a small hill outside the village. From there, they could see the outskirts of Rivenshire, the nearby forests and the distant hills where soldiers often appeared. "Do you see?" Elias asked, pointing to a group of trees where movement suggested scouts might be stationed. "Even small actions can help. If we understand their routines, we can stay one step ahead. We can keep the village safe." Anna nodded, her eyes following the shadows in the trees. "It's not easy," she admitted. "I never imagined I would be part of something like this. I always thought survival meant hiding, staying quiet. Now it feels like it means planning, watching, learning." "Exactly," Elias said. "Hiding keeps you alive for a day, maybe a week. Planning, understanding, and acting wisely keeps you alive, and keeps others alive, for much longer." She memorized the patterns of soldiers' patrols, recognized the signs of approaching danger, and even learned to signal Elias when something unusual occurred. Together they began mapping safe routes, identifying hidden spaces in the village, and developing quiet warning systems. The villagers, once trembling and fearful, began to listen when Anna spoke. They began to understand that knowledge and awareness were powerful weapons in their own right. One morning, while walking through the village with a basket of supplies, Anna noticed a small group of villagers huddled near the fountain, whispering anxiously. She approached carefully. "What's wrong?" she asked. "They say more soldiers are coming," one woman whispered, her face pale. "We heard the drums again." Anna's heart tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "Then we prepare. We watch, we wait, and we act only when it's safe. Captain Elias and I have been planning. We'll be ready." The villagers looked at her, uncertain, but they listened. Her confidence, earned through careful observation and quiet courage, gave them a sense of reassurance. They began to gather supplies, check the village's weak points, and follow Anna's instructions for safety. That night, Anna sat by the window of her cottage, watching the stars appear in the sky. She thought of her father, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, and of Leo, who was dreaming without fear for a few hours. She thought of Captain Elias and the strange turn her life had taken. In the span of a few weeks, she had gone from being a frightened young woman to someone who could act, think, and plan in the face of danger. The night was quiet, but Anna knew that danger could return at any time. She also knew that the village would no longer be passive. They had learned to observe, to prepare, and to act. And she had learned that courage did not always roar. Sometimes it was quiet, careful, and determined, growing steadily in the hearts of those who refused to be broken. As she closed her eyes, she whispered a promise to herself. Whatever came next, she would not let fear control her or her village. They would survive, and they would be ready. The following days were tense, yet purposeful. Rivenshire was no longer just a village trying to survive. It was slowly becoming a community learning to protect itself. Anna had become a quiet leader, her confidence growing alongside the trust she earned from the villagers. Each morning she would rise before dawn, preparing her small family for the day and checking the streets of the village for any signs of movement. Captain Elias had begun meeting with a small group of villagers who were willing to assist him, though most did so in secret. They gathered behind barns, in empty storage sheds, or near the edge of the forest, careful not to be noticed by the patrolling soldiers. Anna was there nearly every time, observing, listening, and learning. She memorized every detail Elias shared, the routines of the soldiers, the areas where they were vulnerable, the times of day when their attention wavered. Elias explained to her that understanding the enemy was the first step in protecting Rivenshire. "You cannot fight what you do not understand," he said one afternoon as they watched from a hill overlooking the village outskirts. "The soldiers are strong, yes, but predictable. They are careless when they think no one is watching. That carelessness can be used to our advantage." She had never thought of danger in such analytical terms before. Survival, she realized, was more than hiding. It was observing, planning, and thinking ahead. Every day she honed these skills, practicing quietly in her home and in the fields, pretending to carry baskets of water or tending to her garden, while her mind catalogued what she saw around her. The villagers, too, were slowly learning. At first, many were frightened or skeptical. They had never imagined they could act with purpose against the soldiers who had terrorized them for so long. But as Anna shared her observations, they began to see that careful preparation could make them safer. They practiced moving quietly, signaling each other, and hiding supplies in safe locations. One morning, as Anna walked through the village carrying fresh bread to her family, she noticed a group of children playing near the fountain. She smiled briefly, but her attention quickly shifted when she saw a small dust cloud rising on the far hill. Her heart tightened. She moved quickly but quietly toward Elias, who was already scanning the horizon. "More soldiers?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. "Yes," he said calmly. "But not just a small patrol. This is a larger group. They may be testing the village, or worse, preparing for a raid."
Anna felt a cold knot of fear in her stomach.
She glanced back toward her father and Leo, who were safely inside their cottage, unaware of the approaching danger. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. What do we do?
Elias's eyes were focused and steady. We prepare.
We watch. And we protect our people. Remember, planning and caution will keep us safe. For the next several hours, they worked quietly. Villagers were directed to hide children and animals in safe locations. Supplies were gathered and distributed to hidden caches. Anna moved among them, offering guidance and reassurance. The fear was still there, but it was tempered by purpose. This was no longer about mere survival. It was about standing strong, knowing that careful action could make a difference. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the village, the first soldiers appeared over the hill. The group was larger than the last patrol, their presence commanding attention. But unlike the previous raid, Rivenshire was ready. From their hidden positions, Anna and Elias observed the soldiers' movements. They noted patterns, remembered faces, and silently counted steps. When a soldier paused near a fence or leaned against a cart, Anna whispered a warning to Elias, who nodded, understanding immediately. Every small detail mattered. The villagers stayed quiet, crouching behind walls, barrels, and haystacks. Even the children were instructed to remain still, their small bodies pressed against safe corners. Anna held Leo close, whispering calm words to him while her mind raced with plans. She could feel the tension in the air, a tangible energy that pulsed through the village. Hours passed slowly, but the soldiers did not notice the careful observation. Their confidence made them careless, just as Elias had predicted. One soldier leaned too far over a fence. Another paused too long near the fountain, and each time, Anna's sharp eyes caught it. She signaled silently to Elias, who recorded each opportunity in his mind. By nightfall, the soldiers began to withdraw, unaware that the villagers had been watching, learning, and preparing. Anna felt a mixture of relief and excitement. For the first time, she realized that her family and neighbors could act with knowledge and purpose. They were no longer completely at the mercy of these men. After the soldiers had disappeared into the darkness, Anna and Elias met near the hill. The night air was cool, and the stars shone brightly overhead. They didn't know we were watching, Anna said quietly, a smile tugging at her lips despite the exhaustion.
No, Elias agreed, and that is our advantage.
The more they think they control us, the more opportunities we have to protect our village.
Anna nodded, feeling a newfound sense of purpose.
She understood that this was only the beginning. Observing and preparing was not enough. They needed to be ready for the next steps. They needed to protect the village decisively if the soldiers returned. Over the following week, Anna and Elias continued their work. They studied maps of the area, marking safe paths, hidden spaces, and vulnerable points. They trained villagers to move quietly, signal with hand gestures, and recognize signs of danger. Each small skill added to their collective confidence. Anna herself grew stronger, not just physically, but mentally. She learned to manage fear, transforming it into focus. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to act despite it. And she began to see that her role in the village was more than just protecting her family. She had become a leader, someone who could inspire others to find strength they did not know they had. One evening, as she and Elias observed the horizon from their hill, he spoke quietly. Anna, you have done more than I expected. Your courage, your attention to detail, your ability to guide the villagers, it makes a difference. It can save lives. Anna felt a flush of pride, but she also felt the weight of responsibility. I don't want anyone to be hurt. I don't want my family or the village to suffer anymore, she said softly. You won't let that happen, Elias said firmly. Because we are ready. We have learned, and we will act wisely. Courage is not just running into danger blindly. It is planning, protecting, and knowing when to move. That is what will keep Rivenshire safe. As night settled over the village, Anna returned home, her mind alive with thoughts and strategies. She watched Leo sleeping peacefully, unaware of the dangerous world outside, and she felt a deep determination. She would protect him. She would protect her father. she would protect the village, and she would do it with courage, wisdom, and care. In the days that followed, small signs of progress became evident. The villagers began to move with more confidence, speaking quietly but firmly when necessary, helping each other without fear. Anna's father watched her with pride, seeing the strength she had found in herself. Even Leo, though still young, began to sense that his sister's courage would help them survive the uncertain days ahead. And through it all, Captain Elias remained a steady guide, never commanding unnecessarily but always present, offering advice and support. He had come to trust Anna's instincts as much as she trusted his experience. Together, they had created a careful, resilient plan that would allow the village to face whatever came next, not with panic, but with purpose. By the end of Part 3, the village of Rivenshire had changed. It was still a place of fear, still surrounded by the threat of soldiers, but it was also a place of preparation, courage, and hope. Anna had grown from a frightened young woman into a confident observer and strategist, ready to lead and protect her people. And as the villagers drifted to sleep under the quiet stars, there was a shared sense of anticipation, a silent understanding that when the next challenge came, Rivenshire would face it together. The days that followed were tense with anticipation. Rivenshire had learned to move carefully, to watch, to prepare. But the villagers knew that preparation alone would not be enough if the soldiers returned in force. Anna rose every morning with a sense of purpose. Her father and Leo depended on her, and the village had come to trust her judgment. She carried this weight quietly, never letting fear control her, but feeling it always beneath the surface. Captain Elias had been working tirelessly alongside her. Each day they reviewed their observations, noting small changes in the soldiers' patterns, new patrol routes, and shifts in behavior. The larger the soldiers' presence grew, the more careful the villagers had to be. Anna began walking the village before dawn, checking the streets, inspecting hiding spots, and guiding families to safer areas. Each step she took reminded her of the stakes. Failure could mean harm to those she loved, and success would require focus and courage. One afternoon, a scout returned from the nearby hills, bringing news that made Anna's stomach tighten. "More soldiers are coming," he reported. "This time, it's a larger unit. They're moving faster than before, and they've been seen carrying equipment for an extended stay. They may be preparing for something serious."
Anna exchanged a glance with Elias. The tension between them was palpable but shared.
"Then we need to make sure the village is ready," Elias said calmly. "Everyone needs to know their roles. We must protect the children, the elderly, and the homes. But we also need to be ready to act if the soldiers try to take advantage of us." Over the next 2 days, Anna worked tirelessly with the villagers. They reinforced fences, cleared narrow paths to create safe escape routes, and practiced signals to communicate silently. Each villager had a role. Some would lead children and animals to hiding places. Others would watch from rooftops or high ground, and a few would monitor the outskirts to warn of approaching danger. Anna guided them all, her confidence inspiring even the most fearful. Her own family was among the most protected. Her father was kept inside the cottage with Leo nearby, while Anna prepared contingencies to move them quickly if necessary. She had hidden supplies throughout the village: food, water, blankets, and she had memorized the locations so she could reach them in the dark. Every small detail had been planned. On the 3rd day, just before dusk, the horizon began to stir with motion. Dust rose in the distance, and Anna's heart began to race. She climbed the small hill near the edge of the village with Elias to get a clear view. Below them, the villagers took their positions quietly, knowing that any noise could alert the soldiers. "There they are," Elias whispered. A long line of soldiers moved steadily toward the village, their armor catching the last rays of sunlight. Anna counted silently, memorizing their formation and the way they were spread across the field. Every movement, every pause, could become an opportunity. Anna felt a mixture of fear and resolve. This was the moment they had prepared for. She could see the determination on the villagers' faces below, their nervous energy tempered by the training they had undergone. Even the youngest had been taught where to hide and how to remain silent. The village had become a network of quiet strength, ready to withstand the danger approaching them. As the soldiers neared, Elias signaled to Anna. "Watch carefully. Do not act until you see the right moment. We are protecting, not provoking. Our goal is to stop harm, not create chaos." Anna nodded, focusing intently on the field. She could feel the tension in her own body, her heart beating quickly, but her mind remained clear. She observed the soldiers, noting those who seemed inattentive or careless. One paused to inspect a small stream, another leaned on his spear for longer than necessary. Each detail was a clue that they could use to guide the villagers safely. Hours seemed to stretch into an eternity. The soldiers entered the outskirts of the village, their boots clattering softly against the cobblestones. The villagers held their positions, silent and still, while Anna whispered instructions to those nearby. She guided a small group to a hidden path behind the cottages, where they could move quietly to safer ground. Every movement was measured, every action calculated. Suddenly, a soldier noticed movement near one of the barns. His shout echoed through the village, and for a moment, panic threatened to spread. But Anna acted quickly. She signaled to another group of villagers, who moved with precision, blocking the soldiers' line of sight and guiding the barn's occupants to safety. Within minutes, the situation was under control, the soldier confused and unable to identify what he had seen. Elias watched closely, impressed by Anna's composure. "You are ready for this," he said quietly. "You are thinking faster than they are, and that is what will keep us safe." The evening wore on, and the soldiers began to realize that the village was not as easy a target as they had thought. They moved cautiously, unsure of what might be hidden around each corner. Anna and Elias observed from their high vantage point, noting the soldiers' frustration and fatigue. They knew that patience would be their greatest ally. As night fell, the village streets were quiet, lit only by the faint glow of lanterns inside homes. Anna moved among the villagers, checking that everyone was safe and in position. She whispered reassurances, reminding them to stay calm and follow the plan. Fear was still present, but it no longer dominated. The villagers had learned to act with purpose, and that knowledge gave them strength. Then, from the edge of the forest, a sudden movement caught Anna's attention. A small group of soldiers had separated from the main unit, attempting to approach from a different direction. She signaled to Elias, who quickly assessed the situation. "We need to redirect them," he said. "If they move into the village unaware, it could create chaos." Anna took a deep breath and guided a team of villagers along the hidden paths they had prepared. Using hand signals and quiet movements, they created small diversions, noise in the opposite direction, shadows moving along fences, and other subtle distractions. The soldiers followed these signs, unknowingly moving away from the village center. It was a delicate dance, requiring precision and calm under pressure. Anna's mind worked quickly, anticipating each soldier's reaction and coordinating with the villagers in real time. Her training, observations, and careful planning all came together in this critical moment. Finally, after what felt like hours, the soldiers began to retreat. They were confused, unable to find the central village or the people they intended to target. Anna and Elias watched as the unit disappeared into the darkness, leaving Rivenshire intact. Relief washed over the village like a soft tide. The danger had not been eliminated entirely, but for now, they were safe. The villagers slowly emerged from their hiding spots, their faces reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and pride. They had survived not by brute force, but by careful preparation, courage, and clever action. Anna's father embraced her quietly, his eyes filled with gratitude. Leo ran to her, his small arms wrapping around her legs. Anna smiled, feeling the weight of the day lift slightly. Elias approached Anna, his expression both serious and approving. "You did well," he said. "You led the village, stayed calm under pressure, and kept everyone safe." Today, Rivenshire showed that courage and wisdom can overcome even the most threatening dangers.
Anna nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility.
She knew the danger was not gone forever, but she also understood that the villagers now had the skills and confidence to protect themselves. They had learned that fear could be managed, and that careful action could make a real difference. As the night settled over the village, Anna walked through the streets, checking on her neighbors, helping them repair small damages, and ensuring everyone was safe. The stars above were bright, and the quiet of the evening was a welcome contrast to the tension of the past days. She reflected on the journey so far, the fear, the preparation, and the moments of courage that had defined their experience. In the heart of Rivenshire, Anna felt a new sense of purpose. She had grown stronger, not just as a protector of her family, but as a leader for her community. She knew that challenges would come again, but she also knew that the village was no longer powerless. With careful planning, courage, and unity, they could face whatever came next. And in that quiet night, with the village safe for now, Anna allowed herself a small moment of peace. The confrontation had tested her, pushed her to her limits, and shown her the strength she carried within. But it had also shown her the strength of those around her, the villagers who had learned to trust her, to follow her guidance, and to act with courage in the face of danger. The night was still, but Anna's mind was alive with plans and observations. She knew that the final challenges were still ahead, but she also knew that she would face them with the same determination, courage, and wisdom that had carried her this far. Rivenshire had survived the first real test, and in doing so, it had discovered something far more valuable than simple safety. It had discovered the strength that comes from unity, careful planning, and unwavering courage. And Anna, standing quietly in the dark, felt a quiet pride in knowing that she had helped her village discover that strength. The village of Rivenshire had survived its first major test, but Anna knew that the days ahead would require continued vigilance. Yet there was a new feeling in the village now, a quiet confidence that had not existed before. The villagers moved through the streets with steadier steps. Children played a little more freely, and conversations carried a tone of cautious optimism. Fear still lingered, but it no longer dominated every thought. The people of Rivenshire had learned to protect themselves, to act wisely, and to trust in one another. Anna rose early that morning, as she always did. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of dew and blooming wildflowers. She moved quietly through the village, checking on her family and neighbors. Her father was already awake, sitting by the window with a mug of tea, his face relaxed for the first time in weeks. Leo ran ahead of her, chasing the sunlight as it reflected off the cobblestones. Seeing him laugh freely, Anna felt a swell of relief and pride. This was the life she had been working to protect. Captain Elias met her near the fountain, where the villagers had begun gathering for the morning. "Good morning, Anna," he said with a calm smile. "You've done remarkable work. The village is safer now because of you." Anna nodded, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility. "It's not just me," she said. "Everyone has played a part. The villagers, they've learned to act together. That's what made the difference." Elias studied her for a moment. True courage is shared. Today, Rivenshire is a stronger village because each person has learned to face fear with purpose. And you've led them through that. For the next few days, Anna and Elias continued their quiet work, reinforcing safety measures, checking paths, and ensuring the villagers knew what to do in case the soldiers returned. They were not idle. Preparation was ongoing, but there was also a sense of calm. The villagers had begun to regain small freedoms. Children could play in the fields, families could tend gardens, and neighbors could meet to share news without the constant shadow of fear pressing on them. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Anna stood on the hill overlooking the village. She reflected on everything that had happened: the fear, the preparation, the confrontation, and the resilience of her neighbors. It had been a long journey, and yet she felt a quiet satisfaction. Rivenshire had survived, not through luck, but through courage, wisdom, and unity. Elias joined her, his presence steady and reassuring. "You've grown," he said quietly. "Not just in skill, but in understanding. You've learned what it means to protect others, to lead without fear, and to inspire courage. The village owes much to you." Anna smiled softly. I only did what I had to do. I couldn't just watch while my family and neighbors suffered. But I see now that courage is not just about facing danger. It's about helping others find their own strength, too.
Elias nodded. Exactly.
And that strength will carry Ribbenshire forward, long after this threat has passed. Over the following week, the village slowly returned to a routine. Fields were tended, fences repaired, and homes restored. Children laughed more freely, and families shared meals without the constant pressure of fear. The soldiers' patrols continued, but they no longer held the same power over the villagers. Rivensher had learned to move carefully, to observe, and to act wisely. They had reclaimed a measure of control over their lives. Anna spent her days checking on the village, guiding families and helping repair the small damages left by the soldiers' presence. She also spent time with her father and Leo, enjoying the simple joys of family life. Her father watched her with pride, seeing the young woman who had grown from fear into strength. Leo, energetic and carefree, followed her closely, learning from her example and inspired by her courage. One afternoon, while Anna helped a group of villagers gather firewood, Elias approached her with a thoughtful expression. "Anna, the village is ready now. You've trained them well. They know what to do, and they trust one another. You've done more than survive. You've created a community that can withstand challenges and continue to thrive." Anna paused, looking at the villagers working together, sharing laughs and encouraging one another. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. "It's amazing to see them like this," she said softly. "They've learned to face fear and still find joy in life. That's what makes a village strong. Not just walls or weapons, but people who care for each other." Elias smiled. "Exactly, and that strength will continue, long after any threat has passed. Rivensher is safe, not because danger is gone, but because the people know how to protect themselves."
As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the village in soft twilight, Anna walked through the streets, checking on her neighbors one last time before heading home.
She paused at the edge of the fountain, watching the water reflect the fading light. She thought of the long journey, how fear had once gripped the village, how the soldiers had arrived with power, and how careful planning, courage, and unity had changed everything. She realized that the true victory was not just in surviving the soldiers' threat, but in transforming the village itself. Rivenshire was no longer a place dominated by fear. It was a place of courage, preparation, and hope. Families could live without constant terror, children could play freely, and neighbors could trust one another. The village had discovered its own strength, and that strength would endure. At her cottage, Anna found her father sitting by the fire, reading quietly while Leo played nearby with a small wooden toy. She smiled, feeling a wave of peace. She had done what she could, and the village had flourished because of it. The danger had tested them, but it had also shown them what they were capable of when they acted together. Captain Elias arrived shortly after, bringing news from the surrounding areas. The soldiers had returned to their base, their patrols less aggressive and more cautious. It seemed that Rivenshire's preparation and resilience had sent a clear message. This village would not be easily intimidated. "Anna," Elias said, his voice gentle but firm, "your leadership has made all the difference. You have given this village something far more valuable than safety. You have given them confidence, courage, and hope. That is the legacy you leave behind." Anna felt a lump in her throat but smiled. "I only did what was necessary. The villagers learned alongside me. They found their own courage, and that is what truly saved Rivensher." Elias nodded. "Yes, but without your guidance, they might never have realized it. You have shown them what it means to face fear with wisdom and strength." As night fell, Anna sat quietly by the window, looking out over the village. The streets were calm, lanterns glowing softly, and the air carried the gentle sounds of evening. Children laughing quietly, families speaking softly, and the occasional bark of a dog. Rivensher had survived, and it had thrived in the process. She reflected on everything that had happened: the fear, the preparation, the confrontation, and the courage displayed by everyone. Each challenge had been a lesson. each obstacle an opportunity to grow stronger. And through it all, she had discovered her own capacity for courage, leadership, and care. Her thoughts turned to her family. Her father's health had improved slightly, and Leo had regained a sense of innocence and joy that had been lost during the weeks of fear. She knew that their lives would never be completely free from challenges, but she also knew that they were now equipped to face them. The village of Rivenshire, once small and fearful, had transformed. It was still humble, with narrow streets and modest cottages, but it was a place of resilience, hope, and quiet strength. The villagers had learned to act together, to protect one another, and to face danger with courage and wisdom. They had learned that true safety came not just from avoiding danger, but from preparing, observing, and acting wisely. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peace of the evening wash over her. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had helped her family and her village find strength in the face of fear. She had led, guided, and inspired, and the village had responded with courage of its own. As she finally went to bed that night, Anna knew that the future might still hold challenges. But she also knew that Rivenshire was ready. The villagers had discovered their own power, and they would continue to protect one another. The village had been tested, and it had emerged stronger, united, and resilient. And for the first time in weeks, Anna allowed herself to sleep peacefully, confident that her family, her neighbors, and the village she loved were safe. The shadow of fear had lifted, replaced by the enduring light of courage, preparation, and community. Rivenshire would endure, and its people would thrive.